everybody. Welcome to our next hackathon session. And today we have really a special edition because today is the big Helidon Q&A hackathon session. I'd like to welcome the Helidon team. I'd like to introduce Dmitry Kornilov, Dmitry Alexandrov, Thomas Langer, Daniel Kat, and David Kroll. Hey, welcome everybody. Great to have you.
Hey,
nice to be back.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi.
Maybe we can start with a short introduction of you guys.
Yeah, okay, let me start in this case.
Great.
We are Helidon developers. Not all Helidon developers, because we have more developers. We have a team in Prague, and most of people here are from Prague. And we have some people in US working on Helidon too. We have on the meeting guys who basically we have a main Helidon architect, which is Thomas Langer, right? He will be happy to answer deep technical questions about Helidon today. We have David Kroll, who is an author of Helidon SE web client. We have Daniel Katz, who is mainly working on the reactive stuff, so everything related to reactive messaging, reactive scheme operators, and so on. This is to him. And we have Mitya. So we have two Dmitry, so we're distinguishing us. I am Dmitry and he is Mitya. It's kind of a smaller from Dmitry in Russian, right? He's doing marketing, he's doing integration, and he's presenting us on the conferences. So if you folks want to bring a couple of more works to introduce themselves, you are welcome.
I think I already I like, as I say, I like to be back. So I've already done one presentation here at this for this hackathon. So you probably know me. So I was just about 2 weeks ago. It's a pleasure to be back.
Great again to have you. Thank you for your time. And okay, we have some collected questions, but we would prefer to hear the questions from the audience. So everybody, if you have questions about Helidon, now it's your chance to ask the people who write the code. Daniel asked, what is actually the difference between Helidon and MicroProfile?
MicroProfile is actually a set of specifications related to cloud native Java. A set of APIs, let's put it this way. So in MicroProfile, there are APIs for observability, like tracing, metrics, health checks. There are APIs for calling other services, like REST client. There are APIs for security, like JWT notification, and so on and so on. What does it mean? It means that MicroProfile is actually just an API. And there are several implementations on the market, several products, let's put it this way, which implement this API. And this is the whole idea about standards implementation and portability, that you can use one of the implementations, you work with MicroProfile APIs, and at some point you are not happy with that implementation. It may be too slow for you, or it's too heavy for you, right? You may switch to another one which better suits your needs with very low cost, because you working with MicroProfile APIs, you are not using, you're not using any implementation specific stuff, right? So Helidon is one of MicroProfile implementations. There's several in the market, as I was saying. So, for instance, Quarkus is another MicroProfile implementation. There is Payara is implementing MicroProfile APIs. OpenLiberty implementing MicroProfile APIs. I think Tommy implementing MicroProfile APIs too. Actually, there is a wiki page, if I find it or someone else would find it, on the Eclipse pages, which lists all MicroProfile implementation. It would be nice to put it there. So that's the difference between Helidon and MicroProfile, right? So Helidon is MicroProfile implementation, but we as Helidon give you users something else plus, right? So we're not only implementing MicroProfile, we're also adding support for various Jakarta standards, right? So for instance, we support JPA, we support JTA too. So feel free to use it. It's portable too, right? And we have our reactive APIs, which is what Daniel is working on, right? And partially David too, which using that reactive APIs, you'll be able to build really fast and small applications, but it uses a little bit different development experience. So different style of programming. Let's put it this case. Reactive programming is different from the normal let's call it normal development experience you possibly used to programming on enterprise Java, Spring Boot, or whatever else, right? So Helidon reactive APIs, it doesn't use any annotations, doesn't use any dependency injection, but you have full control on what's going on, right? So and actually our MicroProfile implementation based on that, and it makes us, because of that, thanks to that, it makes it really fast and small. Right? Hope I answered. Hey, folks, you want to add anything else to that?
Dimitri, maybe we could get one step back. After Dimitri's presentation, I talked to some guys, and they asked me, "Hey, I'm used to develop only with Java Standard Edition, so I have never used Java Enterprise or Spring before, and I'm fine with all these libraries I get from the JDK. So why do I need Helidon, and what does it provide actually?" So for people who are not familiar with Jakarta EE, Java EE, maybe can you explain a little bit what's the benefit of Helidon? What do you provide actually? What features are in?
Okay, so I think that that would be for me. So when you start from the JDK and you say like, what is the value add of Helidon, then the first thing that I would say is a very fast HTTP server and the abstraction of the server request and server response, both for the reactive and for the blocking worlds. So that's the first thing, that if you want to build a microservice, you need to have some kind of communication going in and going out. So the first option is an HTTP server. The second option that we provide is a gRPC server. So you can also expose your service over gRPC, and everything is built in Java. We have support both in the reactive world and in the microprofile world through annotations. The third option is you can connect to a microservice using messaging. So for that, we have the reactive messaging support, again, both in SE and in MP. And this altogether allows you to build basically any kind of microservice and plug it into your microservices environment. We try to build everything with cloud in mind. So if there is a feature that is provided by your cloud or by tools like Kubernetes or Docker, we try not to build it again. We try to use what is there. So one of the things where this comes into mind is configuration. So we have a configuration framework in Helidon. There is also a configuration specification for MicroProfile, and that utilizes the stuff that you can get, like Kubernetes secrets, for example. We can pick them up and make them available to the application. When it comes to security, we support some of the most common approaches to securing your application. So we have basic authentication for your local development and test environments. And we have OpenID Connect for your production environments that connect to a centralized security service. There is also a specification, as was mentioned in MicroProfile, for JWT, which is just a subset of what the OpenID Connect supports. If you use the Helidon specific features, we have the full OpenID Connect support for code-based authentication. And I think that there are, I think, now around 150 modules in Helidon. We are really fine. We have a very fine-grained approach to modularization, so you can really pick and choose what you want. You can also use some of our bundles, like the MicroProfile bundle that just puts all the implementations. But in general, you have libraries that allow you to build a microservice. And that's what Helidon is. And if it's in JDK, we are not doing it again. So for example, logging, we are using Java util logging. We don't want to invent that wheel once more. But there are a lot of things that are not part of the JDK.
Yeah, thank you. Great. There's a interesting question from the chat. It would be great to get a little differentiation what Helidon makes better than other microprofile implementations like Quarkus, for example, or other, maybe even I just wanted to say Micronaut, but it's not the implementation of microprofile, if I get it right. So maybe some differences between Quarkus, for instance.
Okay, with Quarkus, it's there's one very simple difference. Quarkus is actually not a full implementation of microprofile because they have chosen to go a bit different way with the CDI compliance. So they have, for the purpose of support of some compile time processing, they don't support all the features of CDI. As opposed to that, Helidon is actually supporting CDI, CDI SE fully with portable extensions and everything. So that's like, I would say, the major difference between us. Other than that, there are obviously, you can always look at performance, at the size. For example, Helidon SE application, like a full application with metrics tracing and stuff, is around 5 megabytes. And microprofile based application, it's around 13 megabytes, including all the dependencies. Like that's your whole application that you can run. Performance, that's something that is a bit harder to prove. So I'm not sure if we have some numbers ready now. I will, Dimitri, if you have some other things to say about a comparison here.
I have some numbers, if I can. We have the fastest implementation of microprofile reactive streams operators from all the implementations I know about. So I can throw some numbers here.
Yeah, so you put it in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Or
Okay.
alternatively, you can share the screen and demonstrate it. And while you are doing that, so talking about, first of all, Tomasz mentioned that we are small, right? So our MP application with metrics, health checks, blah, 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 it's about 13 megabytes, right? So for comparison, if you do similar kind of application using Spring Boot, you will get, depending on what features you have there, right, from 80 to 130 max. So the difference is quite big. The difference is like 10 times even more, right? So we are trying to be small. We are trying to use as less third-party dependencies as it is possible. And it actually one of the advantages, because if you are working for enterprise, right, then possibly that enterprises, they are very often require a legal review and security review, architecture review of third-party dependencies, right? So more dependencies you have, more complicated your life becomes, because you need to say that I have a list of like 100 dependencies and each of them needs to be approved by your legal team, right? And it becomes a hassle. We are trying to minimize that list. So like Spring Boot, for instance, it depends on half the internet, right? We are trying to depend use as less third-party dependencies as it's possible, right? So that's another difference, right? And the main difference I see, one of the main differences is we are really trying to be as much standards compliant as possible. So Helidon MP is about standards. What it brings you portability. Maybe it doesn't sound really important, but believe me, it is, right? So users sometimes think that we'll use that framework forever. This is good. So we will just stick with that and use it. But I'm telling you that at some point you won't be happy with that because developers stopped supporting it, or there are some security holes, or there is something else. So your legal department said that third-party dependency is not what we want to use, and so on, right? You need to switch. And if you design your application not portable way, then this task may become a really hassle for you. It's complicated to move to something else which something else don't support, right? So we build on standards, and if you use Helidon, you will build a portable application. I mean Helidon MP, right? Helidon is not, but Helidon MP, yes. So I think it makes us. That's the difference. Anything else? Mitya, do you want to add something here?
I just wanted to add something like Helidon is Java 11 plus. That means that we are utilizing all the benefits coming from Java post 9 world, like Jigsaw, like modules, like all of that stuff. That means that you can build really small images of your application with built-in, we're using JLink, for example. That means that once again, small, that means that you're only building what is required for your application and you're not carrying much with you. So this is definitely one of the benefits you would like to know. It's a modern Java, so it's a modern world, so we are modern.
Okay, and coming back to Daniel, I've seen that you demonstrated their benchmarks, right? Do you want to add anything else here?
I think the numbers talks for themselves.
Okay, cool.
Okay, in that case, I will probably answer one more question from the chat. Unfortunately, I will have to leave at past. So there was a question why we do implementations of MicroProfile ourselves, and why don't we choose one of the existing implementations? So in this place, there is only one implementation that tried to do stuff before others, and it was SmallRye. And we are actually using it in one of our implementations of MicroProfile. And in general, we have quite a lot of trouble with that because it's quite often based on libraries that we do not want to have as our own third-party dependencies. So the reason we ended up implementing most of the specifications ourselves is that we want to have as small footprint as possible, including the dependency and transitive dependency footprint. So unfortunately, I will have to leave the 3 minutes. So if there is some other, design or architecture question on Helidon, I can answer that. Otherwise, I will leave it to my colleagues. There was a question about AOT. I tried to answer that one related to Helidon and its support to reflection. So we do have support for reflection in Helidon built into our feature. So if you create an application using our CLI or using the quick start templates, you can just build it into native image. And if you need to add something for reflection, you can either use the GraalVM tools or you can use @reflected as an annotation that we have added.
I just wanted to add something like if the library, which is also you're incorporating like driver system database, AOT compatible, GraalVM compatible, it just all compiles into one native image. This is the great part of it.
There was a question about shared code between the implementations. There is, for example, the SmallRye. Nobody actually stopping you from using that because we are really keeping the specific up to the specifications. So you can use the SmallRye, which is built in the same specifications. So you can just plug it in and it should work.
Daniel, I'm afraid that it's not true.
for some
for some areas, it's not like a generally applicable statement because some of the implementations of SmallRye are a bit deeper in the code, and like for example, you cannot use SmallRye config. That's like you cannot use a third-party config with Helidon. That would not work because we depend on the specific implementation that we have in Helidon. So that's one of the cases where this is not correct.
The messaging and reactive operators are easily switchable.
Okay, that's great to hear. I think the config is really the core part that we cannot switch.
Okay, Thomas, there are a little bit more. There are more questions, technical questions. So if I can ask you to stay here a little bit more, would be great.
So which one?
There was a question about. I think you answered reflection and IoT, right? About IDE support, I think we'll be able to answer ourselves.
That's what I already answered in the chat as well. Okay, the Spring Boot, I think that's not really for me. There is the credential management software like HashiCorp. Right now, we do not have an explicit integration with HashiCorp. We are actually working on that. We have that in our backlog, and it's not as as simple as just integrating with a tool, because we need to understand what are the use cases. So if you would like to see that in Helidon, it would be great if you could look into our issue on GitHub and add the explanation of what you really want to achieve with that. It can be implemented as a simple config source. It can be implemented as something more than that, with the capability to inject stuff in CDI and so on. This is something that we would like to hear from people who are using it. And of course, you can use the HashiCorp's APIs yourself directly until we implement that support in Helidon.
And I'll try to answer at least to sound the answer which I answered in the chat, right? So about our IDE support, right? So actually for Helidon, you don't need any special IDE support, right? So Helidon project will open in any IDE which are currently on the market. We are using Maven, right? So if you generate a Helidon project using Helidon CLI, for instance, you will be able to open this Maven project in any kind of IDE. But IntelliJ, for instance, they have a special support for Helidon, right? Mitya, do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, actually, the Helidon guys provided support. So if you go to just the endpoints, everything which is CDI specific or even Helidon specific, you type into the endpoints, the EDE will provide you the exact location of that endpoints, and you will be able to use it, call them, and explore them and debug them. So yes, there are several, I would say not exactly issues, but in the tracker, so it's a U-track from JetBrains, where people actually ask for support, and it's been implemented. There are even some plugins which are not exactly cared by JetBrains. So there's a plugin done by a third party. I won't say that's a good idea to use, but it is like de facto good support for Helidon as well. So this guy is really cool who did it. But I would also say that an interesting thing about Helidon is exactly the CLI tool. So if you got this tool, you are not bound to any EDE, and you are not even bound to any build infrastructure, I would say. And even if you're not coming from Java world, you are still able to build in Helidon applications by just using the CLI for creating an application, then to building it. And even there's a special dev mode which cares for the changes in your file and rebuilds the application automatically. So actually, that's why we are so versatile in terms of EDE. So you just can use any EDE, just use the dev mode, and it will care for you. So take a look. Definitely have a look at this thing. So yes, we do have support, which is like EDE and both and generic one. I would call it generic support, even for non-Java developers.
Okay, thanks, Mitya. There is a question about supporting Java 17, right? So let me try to answer that. So currently we are at 11, right? So basically moving directly to 17 will require our customers to jump to Java 17. Maybe not all of them will want that, right? So we will keep support for 11, but we will try to move further into Java SE versions as soon as this version is adopted enough, right? We're not going to stay at 11 forever. On the other hand, we already have a preliminary project Loom support in Helidon, right? When it comes public, we don't know, right? Maybe it will be Java 17, maybe it will Java 18, maybe 19. So there is no information about that, but you can download a JDK with Project Loom support already. You just need to go to the Oracle download website and download JVM with Loom support. And with that JVM, you will be able to use Helidon, the latest version, with Project Loom, right? So we have a special support, and possibly we are the only one framework now which does support it, but it makes your request processing bloody fast, right? So if you're interested, just take a look. This is the experimental feature, so it's not to use in production because Project Loom is not production feature anyway, right? It's mainly a stuff to play with, and it also demonstrates our intention to support the latest JDK features early, right? So if you're interested, play with it. We have it for MP now in the latest version of Helidon. We have support for SE. It's coming to the next version of Helidon or in the release after next, right? Anything to add, folks? No. Okay, good. So let's jump to the next question. When I want to build a really small microservice, I think we answered that already, right? Special support in ID, we did answer that. And the question about Spring Boot, why should I move to Spring Boot, to Helidon over Spring Boot? I answered that for some, basically there is a size, right? We talked about that. There is third-party dependencies, we talked about that. And there are actually some performance stuff where we are faster than Spring Boot, right? So on the other hand, I'm not trying to say anything against Spring Boot. Spring Boot is great. Spring Boot is big, and I was using Spring Boot myself. So, uh, but there are definitely reasons to move to Helidon. Okay.
One of the reasons exactly is the new Java modularity, speed. So you get all of the external dependencies that you don't need, because once again, Helidon is cloud native. Cloud native means that it's small and it's fast, because in clouds you pay for memory footprint, then you pay for startup times, and then you pay for storage for something which is like the place you take on disks. Like you really pay for it. I mean, it's like real numbers. And since if you're writing microservice, once again, by the definition, microservice have to be small, have to be fast, have to take one responsibility and do it in a very good way. So well, you don't have to pay extra for the size and the volumes, and this may be a changer in terms of, well, how much you pay. So this is one of the reasons you definitely should take a look at Helidon, because it's so fast and small.
Okay, there is a question about JPA and Helidon. I mean, in some project, I have to use JPA. I've seen that there are other persistent solution. What is preferred? MicroStream. MicroStream is definitely great, right? The Helidon currently doesn't have a deep MicroStream integration. And actually, there is a hackathon now, right? So this Q&A and presentations we are doing is a part of hackathon. And actually, we, Helidon and MicroStream, we have a special prize, Helidon prize, for which we'll give to the best solution application which uses both MicroStream and Helidon, right? And if you folks want to design an integrate MicroStream into Helidon in SE and MP, for instance, or in some of them, or in both, right? it's definitely one of the good candidates for that price, right? So if you want to do it, we are here to answer your questions. We also can contact us offline. You can contact MicroStream folks. They will answer MicroStream related questions. So we are here to help you win the money, right? So try to do it, right? About the other persistence solution, yes, we're sticking with JPA because it's a standard, right? And you can use Hibernate as implementation. You can use Eclipse Link, right? Just jump to guides on our website, and it's actually explained how to add dependencies or whatever. Or you can use our command line interface to generate a sample project, small one, for JPA, right? And modify it after that. So, which is what really I prefer to do because it's easier, right? About the other solutions, with the next version we are releasing sometimes before Christmas, we will add support for Micronaut extensions. And one of the supported extensions is actually Micronaut data, right? So it will allow you to use Micronaut data, which is similar to Spring data, right? And it will work with Helidon. So that's another option, right? But I would prefer possibly JPA only because that it's a standard solution. Right, so what's next? Credential management and reflection. It's been answered already. IntelliJ support, we talked about that. Do you guys really write all the implementations of MicroProfile yourself? If so, why didn't you use any? We partially answered that. Another question is we want to be fast, right? And our MicroProfile implementations are based on our Helidon SE, which is reactive and really fast. And the good answer is we wrote our own implementation because we want to be better than other implementations, right? So better, faster, small, and so on, right? So that's the reason. Come on, share code base between all these micro integrations would be great. Yeah, it would be great, but sometimes, different implementations, it's actually like competition rules of world, right? So if you have one implementation which is faster, another implementation tries to be faster, and then it becomes faster. The first implementation tries to be more faster, and so I think it's good to have alternatives.
Can I just add something here about the, as you say, SEMP? This is quite interesting to understand, because the idea of Helidon as an architecture. So you got this Netty, which is like the foundation. Then we have the layer of SE, which is, I call it the danger zone because it gives you full control of everything doing. And then you have the MP wrapper. So every time so we write something, we first do it for SE most of the time. That means that it's written pure Java with no magic, with no almost no annotation. So it's pure Java with like pure code, which is easily debuggable, and etc. etc. And then there is a wrapper. That means that most of the time when you get the MP, underneath you get this SE, which also provides you almost the same functionality. That means if you have microprofile metrics in MP, you still have the microprofile metrics in the danger zone in SE. You get health checks, you get tracing, etc., etc. So that means that not only getting just a microprofile implementation, still are able to use blazingly fast implementation of those standards. So this is a huge benefit.
Yeah. And touching the IoT questions, right? So there is touched a topic that the only place you need to handle yourself, I mean, in terms of reflection, is frameworks to use reflection over simple for Josh with no annotations, such as JSON, B, and Jackson, right? So basically JSON binding stuff. in the next version of JSON binding, right, we are planning to add a runtime configuration which can customize stuff the same as annotations, right? So, and you'll be able to use annotations, or you will be able, right, to use a runtime configuration, which will provide you with same functionality, maybe even more, right? But it will be in the next version of JSON binding. I'm a project lead of JSON binding, so we are trying to reveal a little bit of plans what we have, right? So it will actually simplify many things related to native image and reflection. Okay. Okay, Marcus, I think we answered all the questions in the chat. So
Yes.
maybe you have some more questions, or folks have some questions. We are happy to answer.
An interesting question would be which flavor actually is more popular? You think in your community, is it more the Helidon MP part, or is the reactive part more popular? What would you say?
Oh, actually, it really depends on the feedback, right? So at one point, we thought that Helidon MP is more popular, right? Because we had more questions about Helidon MP. But recently, like last month, let's say, possibly since 2.0 release, I think that Helidon SE is even more popular, right? Because people started to use reactive messaging, people are starting to use DB client, people are using web client, and so on, right? So we don't have the full information about what's more popular. What I can tell you is based on what people are interested in, what people is asking question about, right? For now, I can say it's like 50-50, or SE is a little bit more popular at the moment, like more questions. But this is my personal opinion, right? So if Helidon folks, you have other opinion. Daniel is definitely thinks that Helidon SE is the only Helidon that exists. Because it's reactive stuff. David possibly too, right? Because,
definitely that's the best one.
Yeah. Mitya, do you have opinion on that?
I believe it's the usual 80-20 percent, like how you say diversification. That means that yes, we do have no question as far as I see for MP part, just because once again, one of the key features is portability, and you got it in MP. So portability, your code is portable, and your code is well standard. That's what our key points are. So that's why, as for feedback, MP is really good. But once again, you got this access to the danger zone. I really like this this way of saying it. That if you have a service which requires a lot of pressure that you have to handle, definitely you get this possibility to use it. But most of the time, you see, as I mentioned in my previous presentation here, so MP is like a jetliner. It's for comfortable, nice flights. And if you need a special tasks, you switch to SE. Although I'll be quite honest, from the feedback I have from my colleagues from other projects, SE API itself is so easy to read, and it's so intuitive that why not using it? I mean, people really love it. So switching to it is really a pleasure. So you can try both.
Yeah,
depending, once again, it depends.
That's exactly the idea, that try both, decide yourself, right? So we think that both of them are great.
What do you guys think about Loom? as soon as as Loom is available, does this influence the reactive part, the Helidon SE, or maybe not? What do you think? Do you expect?
Yes, we do expect, right? So first of all, it will influence other frameworks, right? So blocking programming will become as fast as non-blocking, right? Or maybe not as fast, but very close to be as fast as reactive, right? Which is good. But on the other hand, do you want, if you have an application designed using reactive APIs, will you really want to switch to Project Loom if it's fast or even faster than Project Loom, right? I don't see any sense of doing that. We do plan to support Helidon SE anyway, right? Because we don't believe that reactive programming will die after Project Loom will be introduced, right? And we are also doing some work, which is very, very, very preliminary work to make Helidon SE even more Project Loom friendly. Right, let's put it this way. It's a little bit too early to demonstrate any kind of POCs for that, right? But we're keeping it in mind. And I can tell you a little bit more that we are actually in quite close relationship with Java SE folks who actually are working on Project Loom, right? And they like things we do, we like things they do, and they are actually using Helidon to demonstrate Project Loom performance, right? So we are working together to embrace Project Loom and be the best framework supporting Project Loom. And actually, we do support it, as I said already. So we have an experimental support if you folks want to try it. Download JDK with Loom and experiment it.
There are some use cases where the reactive approach will be still practical, like the messaging, when you want to preserve the back pressure between the JVMs and those things you won't save by the Loom. So I think reactive programming will survive, but for some specific use cases.
What do you think about starting with Helidon? What's your advice if there are developers who are not working on microservices already, so still programming monoliths? So makes it sense to use Helidon in a monolith as well? So should they start with Helidon to learn more about Helidon, and then maybe in one of the next projects they are able to use it in microservices?
You can't use Helidon in monolith, right? Because that's kind of two different concepts. So you can't create a Helidon application and deploy it to your application server, because Helidon application is an executable jar. We don't support deployment spec and so on, right? So it's designed for microservices only, right? And even more, we don't support servlet, right? So if your application is based on servlets, then you will need to redesign it, right? But Helidon is good for breaking the monolith, right? So if you, I'm not saying that each monolith has to be broken, because monolith application, it depends on your use case. It may serve you well. It may actually serve you much better than the microservice application, because monolith and microservices, they each of them has the pros and cons, right? So if you want to read more about that, I had an article on Oracle blog about that, or on my personal blog, so just read about it, right? So monolith is not exactly bad, right? So actually monolith is actually good for the most use cases. But if you, for some reason, for reason of scalability, for instance, decided to break the monolith, yeah, and if your monolith was Java EE application, In this case, supporting standards, which I was talking about already, is a good thing because Helidon supports the same part of standards which your Java EE application does, right? And in this case, to move some bits of your monolith into a microservice becomes easier. So it's like simple copy and pasting, right? So if you now, monolith is basically Java application. We support the same standard. You take a piece of code, move it to Helidon, right? So that's easy. And actually, one of our goals supporting standards and so on was to simplify breaking the monoliths, right? So we even, for that reason, if you are if you subscribe to WebLogic support from Oracle, right, you will get the Helidon support for free, right? It means that you use WebLogic and you want to use microservices, and if you choose Helidon for that, first of all, it will be easier for you to do because we are using the same standards, and the second thing, you'll get support, right? You won't lose it, right, if you migrate.
Let me add something here. It was mentioned, by the way, in some of the previous talks that you can even migrate from different ecosystem, not exactly from writing like monoliths in Java. So if you're working in, I don't know, I'm not sure, like PHP world or Node.js world, and you have to go to real hardcore Java stuff. With Helidon, with its CLI tool, once again, I'm getting back to it. You are not much required to dive into this Maven built infrastructure or whatever it is, building tools, etc., etc. So you are only there with knowing Java and the CLI. So it's really pure, I would say. So you may not come from even like monoliths. You may come from absolutely different ecosystems for writing microservices, and you will have all the support. So this makes it really, really, really attractive, I would say.
Doing the JPA conversion seems totally crazy nowadays. It's all based on 50 or even 60 years old concept of relational data models. I guess this is a MicroStream fan already. When you look at the MicroStream way storing data object streams directly, it's amazing how simple and fast persistent could be, of course. Why didn't have anyone had this absolutely simple and genius idea, the same ideas years before? So, yes, many people had this idea years before. So many Java developers, they told us they had this idea already 20 years, almost 20 years ago. But it was not possible because MicroStream is based on serialization, and most people tried to do this with the standard Java serialization. And with the Java serialization, it's not possible to store and load single subgraphs. And this is the reason why you only can store and load the entire object graph, which means you would store and load the entire database into the memory. So this is not really suited for a database application. And this maybe is the main reason why nobody did it before. There are maybe 40 serializing frameworks out there, but most of them, they base on the Java serialization, so they have the same problems, or they are focused on special things. For instance, JSON serialization, and it's not possible to store complex object graphs with JSON, so this is not possible. And MicroStream core is a from scratch written serialization, so it does not base on the Java serialization. And with MicroStream, it's possible to store and load single subgraphs. And when we load the subgraph, then it's merged directly into the object graph. And this is the main difference to the Java serialization. And it's much faster. And maybe this is the reason why nobody did it before. So first of all, we had to write a completely new serialization, and it took many years. This maybe is the main reason.
But I believe that microservices plus persistence, like in the way like Helidon plus MicroStream, will make some great synergy. They're both tiny, they're both fast, and they're both, well, super fast, I would say. So once again, there's a good chance to not only to integrate this, to play with these two platforms and to integrate them, but also to get rewarded. So I believe it's really a good combination of technology that will do great synergy.
Yeah, and yeah, so we have a great price. So folks, why not to try and get it, right? So integration of MicroStream and Helidon, it makes sense, right? So, and we would be happy if some of you would contribute that to us, right? And you will get your reward, and we will get our reward in terms of that perfect integration.
Thank you all for joining. It was really amazing to have you all at the Q&A session.
Thanks, Marcus. It was a brilliant session, and thanks to the all MicroStream team. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.